Introduction. Friends, if you are excited to watch the much-awaited animated blockbuster, How to Train Your Dragon 2025 in English, then you must like this video. And if you are visiting our channel for the first time, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. In today's video, we are going to talk about How to Train Your Dragon 2025, what this movie is about, where you can watch it, and all the fascinating details surrounding it. I'll tell you on which OTT platform or satellite channel you will get to watch this movie. We'll dive deep into the technical side, the animation department, pre-production, voice recording, post-production, the budget, and the box office performance. We will also discuss the storyline of the film, and I will give you a short review of the plot, without spoiling too much. Beyond that, we'll explore interesting facts, the voice cast, the characters they bring to life, and the performances that make this movie shine. So, I request you all to watch this video till the end, because there's a lot to uncover. Alright friends, let's jump into the video. Plot and narrative. Alright friends, let's dive straight into the heart of How to Train Your Dragon 2025. Buckle up, because this story is packed with adventure, emotion, and a few surprises along the way. The movie kicks off years after the last chapter we saw. Hiccup, once the young, scrappy Viking chief, is now a seasoned leader facing a world that's rapidly changing. Dragons and humans have been living apart for years. But you guessed it, that peace is about to get rattled. From the very start, the film draws you in with a sense of nostalgia. We see flashes of the old bonds between Hiccup and Toothless, even though they're now apart in their own worlds. But don't think this is a slow, reflective story, no. Early on, a shocking event throws everything into motion. A mysterious threat emerges, one that forces Hiccup and his crew to reconsider the old alliance between humans and dragons. The narrative does follow a general arc, setup, conflict, climax. But what's fun is how it plays with parallel perspectives. While Hiccup is dealing with tensions in the Viking world, we also get glimpses of Toothless and the hidden dragon realm, where danger is stirring. The movie jumps between these two worlds, building tension on both sides, and you can feel that the collision is inevitable. One of the key turning points comes when Hiccup realizes that brute force won't solve the problem. There's a brilliant mid-movie twist where a character you least expect takes the lead, shifting the balance of the story. Suddenly, it's not just about old friendships, it's about new generations, new bonds, and the courage to trust again. Conflict-wise, the movie balances external threats, like a ruthless dragon hunter with his own dark past, and internal struggles, Hiccup's fear of failing his people, Toothless' dilemma between family and loyalty. These layers give the narrative an emotional weight that's far beyond just dragon fights and sky chases. Though don't worry, there are plenty of those too, and they are spectacular. The thematic impact hits hard. It's a story about legacy, about letting go, and about realizing that the future may not look like the past, but it can still hold wonder. There are moments where the film slows down to let you feel the weight of decisions. Like Hiccup standing on a cliff, looking out at the horizon, knowing that every choice could change the world forever. One of the most fun things is how the film experiments with perspective. Sometimes you see a scene from a human point of view, and later, the same moment from the dragon's eyes, giving you a richer, more layered understanding of what's really at stake. It's not just good versus evil. It's about two worlds learning to coexist again, with all the tension, beauty, and heartbreak that comes with it. So, as you watch How to Train Your Dragon 2025, get ready for an emotional ride. It's not just an adventure, it's a journey across time, perspective, and the deepest parts of friendship and family. Character development. Alright friends, let's jump right into the heart of How to Train Your Dragon 2025. Because let's be honest, what really makes this movie shine isn't just the action or the stunning visuals, it's the characters. And wow, do they deliver? Let's start with Hiccup. Remember the awkward, scrappy kid who stumbled his way into leadership? Well, now he's a grown Viking chief, and you can feel the weight on his shoulders. He's no longer just trying to prove himself. Now he's trying to hold together everything he's built, his village, his people's future, and the fragile peace between humans and dragons. But here's the twist. Hiccup's growth isn't about gaining more strength or power. It's about learning when to let go. That's the emotional punch of his arc. We watch him wrestle with questions of legacy, with the fear of making the wrong call, and ultimately, with the realization that leadership sometimes means stepping back and trusting others. Now let's talk about Toothless. Yes, our beloved Night Fury has his own arc here. It's not just about being Hiccup's sidekick anymore. In this chapter, Toothless faces his own big choices, torn between his dragon family and his loyalty to Hiccup. There are powerful moments where you see Toothless hesitate, where his instincts as a leader in the dragon world clash with his old connection to the human world. It's emotional, it's raw, and it adds layers to a character who mostly speaks through expressions, gestures, and breathtaking flight scenes. But the magic doesn't stop there. The supporting characters get their time to shine too. Astrid? She's no longer just the tough warrior by Hiccup's side. She's his equal, challenging his decisions, helping him face his doubts, and pushing him to be a better leader. You see their relationship evolve into something mature and deeply rooted, not just romantic, but built on years of shared battles and trust. Then there's the younger generation. That's right. New characters step in, full of energy, questions, and sometimes reckless bravery. They're the ones challenging the old ways, asking why things have to be the same, and pushing for change. Watching how Hiccup and the older crew respond to these young voices adds another layer to the story. It's not just about holding on to the past. It's about passing the torch. The villain in this film is also worth mentioning. Unlike the typical bad guy, this antagonist is complex, driven by past wounds, motivated by a vision that almost makes sense, which makes the conflict much more gripping. You might find yourself questioning whose side you're on at times, which adds a delicious tension to every face-off. And of course, the dragons themselves feel like characters. They're not just background creatures. They have their own behaviors, instincts, loyalties, and choices. The film beautifully shows how the dragons are navigating their own world, not just following the humans' lead. This dual perspective gives the movie emotional weight, especially when you see how the human-dragon relationships shape key turning points in the plot. By the time the big moments hit, the sacrifices, the triumphs, the bittersweet farewells, it all matters because you've watched these characters struggle, grow, stumble, and rise again. It's a story about change, about the risks of love and trust, and about finding your place in a world that's always shifting. So, if you're watching How to Train Your Dragon 2025, keep an eye on the characters, because they're not just driving the story, they are the heart of the story, and every choice they make ripples through the entire adventure. Performances. Alright friends, let's talk about the soul of How to Train Your Dragon 2025, the performances. Because let's face it, no matter how stunning the animation or how thrilling the action, it's the voices behind the characters that truly make this world feel alive. Starting with Jay Baruchel as Hiccup. Wow, what a journey he takes us on. Jay's voice has always carried that perfect mix of awkward charm and quiet determination. But here, you can feel how much he's matured. There's a weariness at times, a weight in his voice, that makes Hiccup's struggles feel so real. He doesn't play Hiccup as a flawless hero. He gives him vulnerability, doubt, and moments of raw honesty. When Hiccup has to make the hard calls, or when he faces emotional crossroads, Jay's performance hits with subtlety and strength. It's the kind of voice acting that pulls you in without ever feeling forced. Then we have America Ferrera as Astrid. And let me tell you, she owns every scene she's in. Astrid is tough, fierce, and sharp, but America brings warmth and grounding to her. She's not just the fearless warrior charging into battle. She's the emotional anchor for Hiccup, the steady presence pushing him to face his fears. America gives Astrid layers. You hear her strength, her tenderness, and her fierce loyalty all in the way she delivers even the simplest lines. Of course, Toothless doesn't speak words, but the animators and sound designers deserve massive credit here, because Toothless performs through body language, chirps, growls, and those expressive eyes. Every twitch, every head tilt, every wing stretch feels intentional, like we're watching a fully realized character with emotions, not just a CGI dragon. Now let's talk supporting cast. And here's where the fun really kicks in. Cate Blanchett as Valka? She brings gravitas and a calm wisdom that balances out the more impulsive characters. Jonah Hill, Kristen Wiig, and Christopher Mintz-Plasse as the lovable side crew add humor and heart, making sure the movie never feels too heavy. Their comedic timing is razor-sharp, but they also deliver when the emotional stakes rise, adding unexpected depth to what could have just been the funny side characters. And let's not forget the villain, played by a new standout voice actor, who brings a chilling, layered menace. This isn't your standard, mwahaha bad guy performance. The voice work here gives the villain nuance, showing flashes of pain, regret, and twisted conviction that make them both intimidating and, at times, surprisingly sympathetic. When the villain faces off with Hiccup, the tension isn't just in the dialogue. It's in the way the actors play off each other, layering emotion and history into every word. What's truly impressive across the board is how the entire cast enhances the emotional depth of the story. You believe these characters, their joys, their fears, their heartbreaks, because the actors pour so much life into their performances. Even in the quiet moments, when no one is speaking, the voice work lingers in the atmosphere, adding weight to the story. So, as you watch How to Train Your Dragon 2025, listen closely. The performances aren't just background noise. They are the beating heart of the film, elevating every scene, pulling you deeper into this beautifully crafted world, and making sure that when the emotional punches land, they land hard. Direction. Alright friends, now let's lift the curtain and peek behind the scenes, because How to Train Your Dragon 2025 owes so much of its magic to the director's vision. This isn't just a sequel slapped together to cash in on nostalgia. It's a carefully crafted, emotionally charged adventure shaped by a director who knows exactly how to stir your heart and drop your jaw. From the very first frame, you can feel the director's hand guiding the tone and mood. The movie opens with sweeping, breathtaking shots of vast dragon-filled skies and storm-lashed seas. And just like that, you're pulled into a world that's both epic and intimate. The director balances these two scales beautifully. On one hand, you get massive aerial sequences that fill the screen with energy and wonder. And on the other, you have these quiet, tender moments. A glance between Hiccup and Toothless, a hushed conversation between Astrid and Hiccup, where everything slows down, and the emotional weight sinks in. One of the most exciting parts is how the pacing works. The director knows when to let the action fly, when to thrill you with high-speed dragon chases or explosive battle scenes, but also when to hit the brakes and let you feel. There's a rhythm to the storytelling that keeps you hooked. Fast, slow, fast again, pause, big emotional beat, then launch right back into the next adventure. It's never flat or predictable. Now let's talk stylistic choices, because oh yes, there are some clever touches here. The director plays with light and shadow in a way that adds real texture to the story. The human world often feels grounded, rugged, earthy, while the dragon world is bursting with bioluminescent color, shimmering skies, and surreal beauty. The contrast between these realms is so vivid, it's almost like the screen itself changes personality, depending on where we are. And when the two worlds collide, the visual blending is stunning. It's like watching a painter mix two palettes you never thought would go together. Another brilliant choice: perspective shifts. The director doesn't just stick with Hiccup's point of view. Sometimes we see the story unfold through Toothless' eyes, or even through the perspective of new dragon characters. This gives the whole narrative a fresh, layered feel. You're not just stuck in one person's head. You're experiencing the world from multiple angles. And when those perspectives crash together at the emotional high points, the payoff is massive. The shot composition deserves serious praise too. The director knows how to frame scenes for maximum impact. Whether it's a wide shot of a dragon silhouetted against a burning sky, or a tight close-up of Hiccup's face as he wrestles with a gut-wrenching decision. Every shot feels purposeful, designed not just to look cool, though trust me they do, but to say something about the characters and their journey. And let's not forget the narrative vision. This movie isn't just telling a straightforward adventure story. It's weaving together themes of legacy, change, family, and identity. The director shapes all of this into a cohesive experience, making sure every subplot, every side character, every little emotional beat serves the larger arc. Even the smallest details, a dragon's fleeting glance, a background melody, a line of dialogue, all build toward the larger tapestry of the film. So, as you watch How to Train Your Dragon 2025, pay attention not just to what happens, but how it's shown to you. The director's touch is everywhere. In the mood, the pacing, the stunning visuals, and the emotional depth. And it's what transforms this movie from just another animated sequel into a cinematic experience that soars. Cinematography. Alright friends, let's soar into the skies and zoom in on one of the most breathtaking aspects of How to Train Your Dragon 2025. The cinematography. Yes, even in an animated film, the camera angles, lighting, and framing play a huge role in pulling you deep into the story. And let me tell you, this movie does not hold back when it comes to visual spectacle. Right from the opening scene, the camera work grabs your attention. You're flying alongside dragons, weaving through narrow canyons, diving under crashing waves, and gliding over endless cloudscapes. The aerial shots are mind-blowing wide, sweeping views that make you feel the freedom and danger of the skies. But here's the cool part. The camera doesn't just show you the beauty, it puts you in it. You don't feel like a passive viewer. You feel like you're riding on Toothless' back, wind rushing past, heart pounding. That sense of immersion comes straight from the way the shots are composed. Now let's talk about lighting. Because wow, the filmmakers knew exactly how to use light to create mood. Scenes set in the human world are often bathed in earthy tones. Warm firelight, stormy grays, and the golden glow of the Viking village. In contrast, the dragon world explodes with otherworldly color. Glowing blues, shimmering greens, flashes of bioluminescence. When the two worlds collide, the lighting becomes a visual metaphor, blending human and dragon energies in stunning ways. There are moments when a single beam of light breaks through darkness, focusing the frame on one character at just the right emotional beat. It's subtle, but it adds so much emotional weight. The framing in this film is also incredibly thoughtful. Big emotional moments often pull the camera in tight. A close-up of Hiccup's eyes as he faces a heartbreaking choice, or Toothless' trembling snout as he sniffs a long-lost place. These intimate frames make you feel the vulnerability of the characters. On the flip side, when the story wants to remind you of the scale of this world, it pulls back for wide, majestic shots. Dragons filling the sky, armies gathered on the horizon, vast hidden caves glowing with dragon fire. This dance between tight and wide framing keeps the emotional and epic scales balanced. And oh, the visually striking moments, there are so many. Picture this. A sunset flight over a sea of clouds, the light rippling across Toothless' sleek black scales. Or a nighttime showdown where shadows flicker against jagged cliffs, and the only illumination comes from bursts of dragon flame. Or an underwater sequence where the light refracts through bubbles and shimmering scales, creating a dreamlike, surreal effect. These aren't just pretty shots, they carry tension, wonder, or heartache, depending on the scene. What's also brilliant is how the cinematography builds tension. Before big battles or emotional confrontations, the camera often lingers, holding on a still shot, tightening the frame, letting the atmosphere settle in. You feel the pause before the storm, and when the action explodes, the camera becomes dynamic and fluid, swooping, tilting and spinning to capture every chaotic detail without making it disorienting. So as you watch How to Train Your Dragon 2025, don't just get swept away by the action. Pay attention to how the visuals are telling the story. The cinematography is doing so much heavy lifting, crafting atmosphere, amplifying emotion, and painting a world that feels both vast and deeply personal. Every light, every shadow, every angle is part of the magic that makes this movie soar. Editing and pacing. Alright friends, let's buckle up and dive into the heartbeat of How to Train Your Dragon 2025. Because editing and pacing are what give this movie its pulse. You can have the most gorgeous shots, the best performances, the coolest dragons. But if the flow isn't right, everything falls apart. Luckily, this film knows exactly how to keep you hooked from start to finish. Right out of the gate, the editing pulls you in. The opening sequence is a masterclass in smooth transitions. We jump from the sweeping skies to the bustling village, from dragon-eye views to intimate human moments, all without ever feeling choppy or disjointed. The editors use smart cuts, matching motion and energy between shots. So even when the scene locations change, the momentum carries forward. You're never left wondering, Wait, how did we get here? It all flows like a well-choreographed dance. One of the real triumphs here is how the pacing balances action and emotion. The editors know you can't just pile on non-stop dragon chases or back-to-back dramatic monologues. Instead, they craft a rhythm that gives you waves. A thrilling aerial battle followed by a quiet, reflective campfire scene. A tense villain confrontation followed by a light-hearted moment with the younger characters. This rise and fall of tension keeps you emotionally engaged. You're not drained by too much intensity or bored by long lulls. And oh, the montage sequences. They're some of the best editing showcases in the film. When the story needs to cover time or show parallel events, the montages weave together different characters' journeys seamlessly. We see Hiccup planning, Astrid training, the dragons preparing, the villain scheming, all cut together in a way that builds anticipation without feeling rushed. Each clip adds to the build-up, tightening the tension until you're practically bouncing in your seat, waiting for the big moment to hit. But let's talk about tempo shifts, because this film plays with pacing in clever ways. There are scenes where the editing deliberately slows things down, lingering on a character's face, holding a silent moment just a second longer than expected, and these pauses hit hard. They give the audience room to breathe, to absorb the weight of what's happening. Then, just when you've settled into that quiet, the film snaps back into high gear, and you're off on another heart-pounding flight or battle. This contrast between slow and fast makes the big moments feel even bigger. One standout is how the editors handle parallel action during the climax. We're cutting between multiple fronts, Hiccup facing his personal crisis, Toothless navigating a dragon standoff, the younger generation executing a risky plan. And yet, it's never confusing. The timing of the cuts, the way each thread builds and releases tension, creates a breathtaking sense of urgency. You're riding the edge of your seat because the editing keeps everything tight, sharp, and perfectly interwoven. Importantly, the pacing supports the emotional beats. Big reveals, betrayals, reconciliations. They land because the film gives them space. The editors know when to pull back and let a character's reaction linger, when to cut in close, or when to shift perspectives for maximum impact. This emotional pacing is what makes the narrative resonate. It's not just plot points zipping by. It's a carefully crafted journey where every scene earns its place. So, when you watch How to Train Your Dragon 2025, keep an ear tuned not just to the roar of dragon wings or the clash of swords, but to the rhythm beneath it all. The editing is the silent force keeping the story alive, smoothing transitions, holding tension, letting the emotional waves rise and fall. And it's what turns this adventure into something you feel as well as see. Soundtrack and score. Alright friends, let's turn up the volume and dive into one of the most powerful engines driving How to Train Your Dragon 2025, the soundtrack and score. You might not always consciously notice it, but the music in this movie is working overtime to make sure every emotional punch hits harder, every action scene feels more thrilling, and every quiet moment sinks deeper into your heart. From the very first notes of the opening sequence, the score sweeps you away. You can hear echoes of the iconic musical themes from the earlier films. Those bold, adventurous horns, the soaring strings, the delicate flutes that dance through moments of wonder. But this isn't just a repeat of past glories. The composers introduce new motifs that reflect how the story and characters have grown. There's a maturity to the music, a richer emotional palette, that matches the weight of the decisions and challenges Hiccup and his crew now face. One of the most exciting things is how the recurring motifs weave through the film. Whenever Hiccup faces a leadership moment, you'll catch the familiar rising melody, a musical signal that his journey is continuing, that he's standing on the shoulders of everything he's learned. When Toothless appears, there's that playful, slightly mischievous tune that instantly sparks warmth and nostalgia. And when the new villain steps onto the stage, a dark, brooding undercurrent creeps into the soundtrack, hinting at danger before a single word is spoken. These musical fingerprints guide you emotionally without ever shouting at you. The score also knows when to hold back, and that's where it really shines. There are scenes where silence, or near silence, speaks louder than any orchestra. Imagine a tense standoff, where the music drops to almost nothing except a faint trembling note, stretching the tension until you're holding your breath. Or a heartbreaking farewell where the score fades into the background, letting a character's shaky voice or the sound of the wind carry the weight of the moment. These uses of restraint make the moments when the full orchestra does return feel even more overwhelming and cathartic. And let's talk about the action sequences, because the music here is a masterclass in momentum. The rhythm of the drums, the driving strings, the bursts of brass, they don't just sit on top of the visuals, they ride the action, syncing perfectly with the swoop of a dragon's dive, the clash of a sword, or the rush of a narrow escape. The score adds an invisible layer of choreography, turning already thrilling scenes into adrenaline-fueled set pieces that stick in your memory. One of the real highlights is how the soundtrack balances cultural textures. Just like the earlier films, the music draws from Nordic and Celtic influences. The lilt of pipes, the resonance of ancient drums, the raw edge of folk instruments. But here they're blended with sweeping cinematic arrangements that give the whole sound a timeless, epic feel. You're getting the ruggedness of a Viking saga and the elegance of a grand fantasy all rolled into one. What's especially fun is how the score evolves alongside the characters. As Hiccup wrestles with self-doubt or steps into a new role, the music subtly shifts to mirror his inner journey, sometimes tentative, sometimes triumphant, sometimes bittersweet. When Astrid leads a charge or Toothless faces a critical choice, the score adjusts its emotional colors to highlight their arcs too. It's like the music isn't just background, it's part of the storytelling, whispering what the characters can't always say out loud. So, as you watch How to Train Your Dragon 2025, let your ears stay wide open. The soundtrack is doing so much heavy lifting, amplifying the thrills, deepening the emotions, and painting the story in musical colors that stay with you long after the credits roll. Whether it's a heroic anthem, a tender lullaby, or a thunderous battle cry, the music makes sure you don't just watch this movie, you feel it. Themes and messages. Alright friends, now let's fly a little higher and look beyond just the plot, the action, and the gorgeous visuals of How to Train Your Dragon 2025. Because tucked inside this thrilling dragon adventure are big, meaningful themes that give the story real heart and weight. And let me tell you, this film doesn't just toss out shallow messages. It dives deep into ideas that will leave you thinking long after the credits roll. First up, the theme of legacy. From the very start, you feel the weight of what Hiccup and Toothless have built over the years. The bridges between dragons and humans, the peace they've fought for, the trust they've nurtured. But the movie asks, how do you protect a legacy? And maybe even more painfully, when is it time to let go of it? Hiccup struggles not just with leading, but with handing over responsibility, teaching the next generation, and realizing that his story isn't the only story that matters. That theme alone packs a punch, especially for longtime fans who've grown up alongside these characters. Then there's the theme of change versus tradition. The world in this movie is shifting fast, new threats, new alliances, new ways of thinking. Some characters want to hold on tightly to the old ways, to keep everything as it's always been, while others push for bold new steps, even if it means shaking up the past. The tension between preserving what's familiar and embracing the unknown runs through every part of the narrative. You see it not just in the humans but in the dragons too. How they adapt, how they struggle, how they choose whether to trust. Another beautiful thread is the exploration of communication and understanding. This isn't just about humans learning to speak to dragons. It's about people learning to listen to each other across differences, across generations, across conflicting goals. There are moments when you watch characters fail, stumble, and misjudge, only to realize that true connection requires patience, vulnerability, and humility. The film doesn't treat this lesson lightly. It builds it carefully, showing the cost of miscommunication and the triumph of finally breaking through. The theme of identity and belonging is also front and center. Hiccup, Astrid, Toothless, they're all wrestling with the question, who am I now? Am I just the person others see? Or is there something deeper I need to embrace? And where do I belong? With my old family, my new one? Or somewhere entirely unexpected? The film gives each major character a personal arc that touches on these questions, making the stakes feel deeply personal, even amid all the epic dragon battles. One of the most moving undercurrents is the message about sacrifice and growth. Nothing meaningful in this story comes without cost. Characters are forced to make painful decisions, to leave things behind, to put others before themselves. And yet, the movie never paints sacrifice as pure tragedy. Instead, it shows how loss can open doors to new beginnings, how endings can spark fresh hope. It's a bittersweet, mature message that gives the film emotional resonance beyond just its plot twists. And woven throughout it all is the big, timeless theme of coexistence. Can creatures as different as dragons and humans truly live side by side? Can fear, greed, and misunderstanding be overcome by trust, respect, and love? The film doesn't serve up easy answers, but it shows the beauty and power of trying. So when you watch How to Train Your Dragon 2025, pay attention to the layers beneath the surface. Yes, it's a thrilling, funny, heartwarming adventure. But it's also a rich exploration of what it means to lead, to change, to connect, and to grow. These themes aren't just sprinkled on top. They're baked deep into the bones of the story, giving it the kind of depth that sticks with you long after the last dragon soars across the screen. Visual effects and CGI. Alright friends, let's soar straight into the dazzling skies of How to Train Your Dragon 2025. Because the visual effects and CGI in this movie don't just look good. They transport you into a living, breathing fantasy world where dragons feel as real as the ground under your feet. From the moment the first dragon glides across the clouds, you can tell the effects team has pushed their craft to the next level. These aren't just flashy graphics thrown on top of the story. They're woven so tightly into the fabric of the world that you believe in every scale, every wing flap, every blast of fire. The dragons have weight, texture, personality. Whether Toothless is blinking with subtle, cat-like curiosity, or an enormous new dragon species is crashing through a mountainside, the CGI sells every moment without slipping into cartoonish excess. One of the most impressive achievements is how digital effects blend seamlessly with the environments. The artists use a mix of real-world textures, misty forests, craggy cliffs, rolling ocean waves, and integrate the dragons and action into them so naturally that it never feels like you're watching two separate layers. When Hiccup reaches out to touch a dragon's snout, you can practically feel the leathery surface, the damp breath, the tiny muscle twitches. The digital creatures interact with the human actors in a way that feels immediate and convincing. What's especially exciting is how the movie balances spectacle with restraint. Sure, there are jaw-dropping set pieces, dragon battles in midair, massive storms lit up by lightning, crumbling fortresses collapsing in slow-motion detail. But the effects are always in service to the story. They're not just there to wow you. They're there to pull you deeper into the tension, the wonder, the thrill. You're not watching a visual effects showcase. You're living inside an adventure. Let's not overlook the practical effects either. While a lot of the creatures are CGI, the filmmakers cleverly mix in real physical props where it counts. Think about the intricate details on Hiccup's gear, the weathered surfaces of the ships, the authentic feel of the costumes. These practical elements ground the digital world, making the transitions between physical and digital almost invisible. You never hit that jarring moment where the CGI feels like a layer on top of reality. Instead, it all meshes into one unified, immersive experience. And can we talk about the lighting and atmosphere? The visual effects team knows how to use light and shadow to make the CGI pop without looking artificial. The way dragon scales reflect moonlight, the glow of fire flickering off wet stone, the shimmering haze of heat during a battle. These little details elevate the effects from technically impressive to emotionally alive. You're not just seeing creatures, you're sensing the mood, the danger, the intimacy of every scene. Another standout element is the character animation on the dragons. These aren't static beasts, they're expressive, nuanced, full of emotion. Toothless, as always, is a marvel of subtlety, with every ear flick and eye movement loaded with personality. The new dragons introduced in this chapter each have their own unique motion styles and physicality, which the animators use to tell you something about their temperament and role in the story. It's not just about what they do, it's about how they move, how they react, how they feel real. Finally, let's not forget the sheer imagination behind the effects. The team isn't just copying what worked before. they're expanding the visual language of the franchise. We get new environments, new visual motifs, new forms of dragon magic and flight choreography that keep the world feeling fresh and unpredictable. You're constantly treated to moments where you think, wow, I've never seen that before. And that sense of wonder, that's the magic the visual effects bring to life. So when you watch How to Train Your Dragon 2025, let your eyes drink in every pixel, every spark, every sweep of a dragon's wing. The visual effects don't just decorate this story. They build it, they shape it. They pull you into a realm where fantasy feels touchable, breathtaking, and completely unforgettable. Set design and locations. Now let's dig into one of the unsung heroes of How to Train Your Dragon 2025. The set design and locations. These aren't just backdrops for the action. They're crucial pieces of the world that breathe life into every scene. The locations and the way they're brought to life through production design shape the film's mood, amplify the stakes, and immerse you into a world where dragons feel at home, and humans are part of an ever-evolving, mystical landscape. From the moment you enter the world, you're hit with a sense of place. The villages, the forests, the towering cliffs, they feel as if they've existed long before the story started. As if they've been weathered by countless stories, myths, and battles. These aren't your typical fantasy locations either. There's a real sense of history and character in each space. The homes of the villagers, for instance, feel lived in, rustic, and honest, but they also reflect the values of the characters. Ingenuity, connection, and hard work. There are ropes, nets, dragon-inspired tools hanging from every nook, suggesting not only a practical life, but also one deeply intertwined with dragons. Now let's talk about the natural settings. Oh boy, the wilderness, the skies, the towering mountain ranges. These locations aren't just visually stunning, they mean something. When Hiccup and his crew are out there in the wilds, the landscapes have a way of mirroring their inner journey. Take those sweeping aerial shots of the cliffs and the wide ocean. They aren't just pretty backdrops. They're the spaces where freedom, adventure, and self-discovery unfold. You can see how these locations help define the characters' mindsets. Hiccup has grown so much, and the environments around him reflect that expansive journey. Wide, open, endless. He's not boxed in anymore. The film's locations invite you to feel the vastness of the world and the scope of what the characters are facing. The dragon habitats. Oh man, these are where the set design really gets to shine. Each dragon's home is as unique as the creature itself, meticulously designed to reflect their characteristics. Whether it's the eerie storm-lashed cliffs where a new breed of dragon resides or the cozy, sheltered nook where Toothless roams, each location feels designed to make you feel that this world is alive. It's not just a bunch of sets, it's a space that evolves with the story. The dragon lairs have intricate designs, with rock formations that make it clear that these creatures are ancient, wise, and capable of carving their own spaces into the world. The visual depth of these places, full of jagged rocks, winding caves, and hidden grottos, invites you to want to explore every nook and cranny. And then, of course, there's the villain's lair, which adds a dark, foreboding edge to the landscape. The location is not just a hideout, it's a reflection of the character's philosophy. There's a sense of menace built into the environment with harsh, angular architecture and a color palette that feels cold and unwelcoming. When you first set eyes on it, it's not just the villain's lair, it's an extension of their power, their vision. The very design of this place makes you feel like a storm is about to break, like the tension is going to crack and spill over. What's also impressive is how the props and set dressing help sell the story. Take a look at the everyday tools, weapons, and gadgets strewn about. Whether it's the makeshift dragon traps or Hiccup's now legendary gear, every item tells you something about the character and the world they're in. These aren't just props, they're symbols of the journey. The maps, the worn leather armor, the custom-made dragon saddles, they all speak to the practicality of life in this world, where survival and creativity are key. Even the small details in the village, the fire pits, the wooden walkways, the intricate carvings on dragon-scale shields. Everything is layered in to give you a sense that this world has been lived in, shaped, and crafted by the characters themselves. But let's not forget about the skies. And I mean the skies. The aerial shots in this film are another layer of the location work. Flying sequences, Whether soaring on toothless back or navigating through storm clouds, give the audience a sense of being immersed in a vast open world. The camera soars, dipping and turning, catching the scale and scope of the places these characters explore. The great open skies are both liberating and intimidating, reminding you that even in a world of dragons, there's always something larger at play. Finally, there's the sense of connection between humans and nature that's built into the very locations. The locations don't just exist in isolation, they're integrated with the characters' journeys. From the lush forests where friendships are forged to the craggy, dangerous cliffs where battles are fought, each setting adds to the feeling that this world is not just a backdrop. It's alive, breathing, evolving alongside the people and dragons that inhabit it. So, when you watch How to Train Your Dragon 2025, look at the world around the characters. It's more than just beautiful scenery. It's an active, visual storyteller in its own right. The sets and locations don't just create a sense of immersion. They enhance the emotional beats, reflect the internal struggles of the characters, and ground the dragons in a world that feels like home. Dialogue and script. Okay, let's talk about the heart of any good story, the words. How to Train Your Dragon 2025 brings its A-game with dialogue that is not just engaging, but downright memorable. It's the kind of writing that stays with you long after you leave the theater. Whether it's a clever quip, a heart-wrenching confession, or a quiet moment of understanding between two characters, this script doesn't just serve the plot. It enhances the emotional journey and makes every conversation feel like it matters. First, there's the sharp wit that has always been a hallmark of this franchise. Hiccup, as always, is at the center of this quick-paced banter. He's a character who's naturally clever, but also self-deprecating and sometimes unsure of himself, and the script knows just how to play with that. His lines are often laced with dry humor and clever observations that not only lighten the mood, but also give you a sense of who he is. There are moments where Hiccup delivers a line with such perfect timing, it'll make you laugh, but there's always a deeper layer. For example, during an intense scene, Hiccup might throw out a sarcastic comment, lightening the tension just enough before diving into the seriousness of the moment. It's that perfect balance of humor and heart that makes him so relatable. Astrid, as the voice of reason, has her own sharp moments of wit too. She doesn't just deliver lines, she owns them. Her dry, no-nonsense approach contrasts perfectly with Hiccup's more thoughtful, sometimes neurotic personality. Their exchanges crackle with chemistry, and the dialogue perfectly captures the evolution of their relationship, from playful teasing to deeper, more supportive exchanges. These little moments of banter build a sense of camaraderie and intimacy between them. And let's not forget the dragon dialogue. Toothless doesn't need words to speak volumes, but the subtle nuances in his growls, huffs, and purrs are perfectly translated through the script, creating a character whose emotions are as clear as Hiccup's. Then there's the emotional weight. The film doesn't shy away from the big, heavy moments, the ones that have you on the edge of your seat, fighting back tears. In a pivotal scene, where Hiccup faces the burden of responsibility and the weight of his family's legacy, the dialogue doesn't just tell you what he's feeling, it makes you feel it. The words are simple, but packed with years of emotional buildup, drawing on everything Hiccup has gone through up until this point. And that's the brilliance of this script. It knows when to speak plainly, when to be heartfelt, and when to use the power of silence to say everything that needs to be said. The supporting characters also shine through their dialogue. Stoic, for instance, has some of the most powerful moments of the film. His lines are fewer, but weighted with experience and love. When he speaks, you feel the depth of his wisdom and the internal conflict of a father trying to protect his son, while also accepting that his son is carving his own path. Stoic's quieter moments with Hiccup have the kind of emotional resonance that'll make you sit back and think, wow, this is more than just a father and son. It's about legacy, about letting go, about passing the torch. And of course, there's the villain's dialogue, which adds an entirely different layer to the script. The antagonist's words are often laced with menace and dark conviction, adding a sharp contrast to the lighter, more hopeful moments. But here's the kicker. The villain isn't all evil monologues. There's a certain rhetoric to their beliefs that makes them almost understandable. The script smartly uses their dialogue to give us a glimpse into their motivations, making the conflict feel not just external but ideological. It's a battle of beliefs as much as it is a battle of action, and the dialogue captures that tension brilliantly. But perhaps the most striking aspect of the dialogue is how relatable it feels. Even amidst dragons and epic adventures, the script keeps the human element at the forefront. There are lines about doubt, fear, love, and sacrifice that land with such authenticity that it's hard not to connect with them. Whether it's a quiet moment between Hiccup and Astrid where they reflect on their journey, or a brief exchange with friends as they prepare for the next big challenge, the dialogue keeps it grounded. It's not trying to be overly lofty or pretentious. It's just real, heartfelt, and exactly what these characters would say in these situations. The standout lines are everywhere, but a few will undoubtedly stick with you. One line that carries a lot of weight. Sometimes the hardest part of growing up is knowing when to let go. It's simple, but it hits right in the gut, especially when you see how Hiccup grapples with this throughout the movie. Or a quiet moment when Toothless, communicating in his own unique way, has a line of his own that brings an emotional punch without a single word. In the end, what makes the dialogue of How to Train Your Dragon 2025 so effective isn't just the sharp humor or the emotional drama. It's how every line serves the story and the characters. The script doesn't waste a word. Every conversation, every line of dialogue, every moment of silence is carefully crafted to enhance the relationships, drive the plot forward, and make sure the emotional beats land right where they need to. And that, friends, is what makes this film truly memorable. Not just the dragons, but the words that give them life. Genre execution. Let's talk about how to Train Your Dragon 2025 plays with the genre, and whether it follows the usual rules or decides to break a few of its own. On the surface, it's a classic fantasy adventure with dragons, flying, epic battles, and an unlikely hero. But dive a little deeper, and you'll see that this movie doesn't just settle into its genre's typical mold. It gives you something that feels fresh, exciting, and a little unpredictable. When it comes to action, the movie knows how to deliver big, adrenaline-pumping moments, but it also understands that action isn't just about explosions or sword fights. No, the action here is about feelings. The emotional stakes of the battle make the physical ones matter. There's a real sense of tension and weight during the dragon chases and aerial combat scenes. It's not just about how fast the dragons can zip through the skies. It's about the personal stakes for Hiccup and his friends. Every dodge, every twist, every risky maneuver feels connected to their journeys. The action isn't just flashy for the sake of it, it has purpose. The film gives us the kind of action that gets your heart racing, but never forgets why we're invested in these characters. Now, when it comes to suspense, the movie really thrives. It doesn't just coast on dragon fights or big villain confrontations. No, it gives you those quiet, tense moments where the audience is hanging on every word. Whether it's a dangerous trek through a dragon-infested forest, or the looming presence of a new unseen threat, the suspense builds in clever, unexpected ways. The film introduces an element of mystery with new dragons and darker plots. And while there's plenty of danger, the film takes its time letting the suspense simmer, rather than throwing everything at you all at once. The pacing of the suspense is deliberate, with moments where you're unsure whether to trust a new ally, or even a familiar character. You know something big is coming, but you don't always know exactly when, or how, it's going to hit. Humor? Oh, it's sharp, witty, and perfectly timed. The film doesn't bombard you with gags every minute. It knows that humor works best when it's earned. Hiccup's sarcastic one-liners, the subtle jokes between him and Astrid, and even the interactions between the dragons bring a level of charm that lightens the mood without ever feeling forced. The humor never gets in the way of the story or the emotional moments. Instead, it complements them. One minute you're laughing at a clever quip, and the next you're holding your breath during a dramatic confrontation. It's that perfect balance of light and heavy that makes the film feel both relatable and emotionally rich. As for drama, the film leans into its emotional beats with such authenticity that it feels like you're living each character's growth with them. The challenges Hiccup faces, the tough choices, the struggle between duty and personal desire. It's all there, building on the themes of the previous films, while also pushing the characters into new territory. This isn't just the usual hero's journey, where the protagonist faces external threats. It's about confronting internal dilemmas and growing through those challenges. The personal stakes feel as high as the physical ones, and the emotional drama has real weight. The script doesn't shy away from exploring the cost of leadership, the burden of responsibility, and the value of friendship. These are the things that ground the genre, making it resonate beyond just fantasy and adventure. But what really sets this film apart is how it subverts expectations in a way that feels organic. It doesn't just play it safe with the typical fantasy tropes. It takes the genre and spins it in a new direction. Sure, there are moments that feel familiar, the hero's rise, the dragon bonding, the epic battle. But there's also a layer of complexity that's not always seen in family-friendly fantasy. The world isn't just magical, it's built on real consequences. And the dragons, they're not just mystical creatures. They're actual characters with their own desires, fears, and personalities. The movie doesn't simply rely on cliches like, dragons are magical beasts to be tamed, or heroes always get the happy ending. There's a sense of real risk and sacrifice in this world. The film's balance of action, suspense, humor, and drama is another reason why it stands out. It gives you the thrills you expect from an action-packed fantasy, the tension that keeps you on edge, the laughter that makes the characters feel human, and the emotion that punches you right in the chest. This is a film that keeps you on your toes, knowing when to hold back, and when to explode with excitement, knowing when to crack a joke, and when to make you pause and reflect. By weaving all these elements together in such a seamless, thoughtful way, the film doesn't just stick to its genre conventions. It elevates them, taking the familiar and adding a layer of depth, authenticity, and freshness. The genre isn't just a blueprint here. It's a playground for the filmmakers to craft a story that doesn't just meet your expectations, but surprises you in all the best ways. Social and cultural commentary. When you dive into How to Train Your Dragon 2025, you're not just flying on the back of a dragon through gorgeous skies. You're also soaring through some deeper, more reflective ideas about our world today. This isn't just a fantasy about dragons and heroes. It's a story that quietly comments on contemporary issues, politics, and culture, without ever feeling like it's preaching or forcing its message onto you. The film balances these topics beautifully, letting them simmer beneath the surface of the action and drama. Let's start with the theme of environmentalism. Dragons and humans live in a delicate balance, and throughout the film, you get a real sense that this isn't just about the bonds between the characters and their dragons. It's about understanding the fragility of nature and the need to protect it. There are moments where the characters reflect on the damage that human actions have caused to the world and the consequences of exploiting creatures for personal gain. This resonates strongly with the environmental issues we face today, especially when it comes to sustainability and respecting nature. The film doesn't hammer you with a save the planet message, but it certainly nudges you to consider how our actions affect the ecosystems we rely on. The dragons themselves, as creatures that thrive only when the world is in balance, act as a metaphor for this idea. They represent the wild, the untamed forces that we are responsible for preserving, not exploiting. Then there's the idea of leadership, and what it means to be a leader in today's world. Hiccup, throughout the film, has to grapple with the responsibility that comes with leading a community, not just in terms of strategy or strength, but in terms of ethics, wisdom, and empathy. This feels like a subtle commentary on the need for leadership that is both compassionate and inclusive, especially in times of division. There are moments where Hiccup faces difficult choices that require him to think not just about immediate victory, but the long-term impact of his decisions on his people, his friends, and the dragons. It's an exploration of leadership that challenges the traditional notion of what it means to be in charge. Not about power, but about understanding and connection. In a world where we see political leaders often divided by power struggles, this theme feels timely. Hiccup's journey represents the kind of leadership that is driven by the desire to unite and protect, not conquer and divide. Conflict and diversity is another theme that the film touches on, albeit subtly. Throughout the movie, characters are asked to reconcile differences, whether it's between humans and dragons, or between differing beliefs within the human community. This reflects larger societal issues of tolerance and understanding in the face of conflict. The film emphasizes that unity doesn't mean sameness, but an understanding of each other's differences. You see this play out with how different cultures or tribes interact in the film, and how Hiccup's role as a bridge between humans and dragons mirrors the idea of cultural reconciliation. This theme is handled in a way that feels like a natural progression for the world the characters live in, rather than an overt political commentary. It shows how dialogue, empathy, and cooperation can pave the way for a better world, even when the forces of division seem overwhelming. Then there's the idea of tradition versus progress, a concept that often arises in cultural discussions today. Hiccup's character, who challenges traditional ways of thinking, especially about how humans should interact with dragons, becomes a symbol of innovation and new perspectives. The older generation, represented by characters like Stoic, often clings to the old ways, thinking that these methods are the only way forward. But Hiccup's approach, one that embraces change and adapts to new ideas, pushes the narrative forward, challenging both characters and the audience to think about how we view progress. This tension between tradition and innovation feels very relevant in today's world, where there is often a struggle between holding on to the past and embracing the future. The film explores this in a way that doesn't feel forced or preachy, but rather through character growth and the evolution of the world itself. There's also the idea of legacy, both familial and societal. Hiccup has to navigate his father's legacy, while also trying to forge his own path. This represents the universal struggle of trying to carve out one's identity when surrounded by expectations. In a world that's often driven by the weight of legacy, this theme rings true for anyone who's ever had to balance their own ambitions with the inheritance of tradition. This conversation about legacy is layered in the film, not just in terms of family, but also about what kind of impact one leaves on the world. Hiccup's journey shows that true legacy isn't about power or control, but about how you leave the world better than you found it. And speaking of leaving a better world, the film's subtle commentary on mental health is also worth noting. Hiccup, like many of us, is often battling inner doubts and fears about his worth, his future, and the weight of his responsibilities. This isn't a movie that just lets its characters go through the motions. It shows their internal struggles. Hiccup's journey is as much about self-acceptance and mental resilience as it is about the epic external challenges he faces. It's a refreshing take on the idea that strength doesn't come from simply defeating your enemies. It comes from understanding and confronting your own vulnerabilities. These social and cultural threads are woven so naturally into the narrative that they don't feel like a forced agenda or an afterthought. Instead, they enrich the world of How to Train Your Dragon 2025, offering a layer of depth that adds weight to the dragons, the characters, and the adventures. The film may have you riding dragons through the clouds, but it's also grounded in the realities of human nature, society, and the world we all share. Audience engagement. How to Train Your Dragon 2025 isn't just a film that you watch and forget. It's the kind of movie that stays with you long after the credits roll, resonating on a deep emotional level and stirring something inside you. Whether you're laughing, holding back tears, or sitting on the edge of your seat in excitement, this movie has a knack for pulling you into its world in a way that few films can. So let's dive into how it truly connects with its audience. Laughter. It's not just the quirky dragon antics or Hiccup's sharp wit that'll have you cracking up. The humor here is real, grounded in the relationships between the characters, especially Hiccup and his friends. The banter is natural, the moments of comedy don't feel forced, and they often spring from the characters' personalities. Think about how Hiccup, Astrid, and even the dragons get into these light-hearted yet hilarious moments. It's the kind of comedy that feels earned and connected to the emotional arcs, making it all the more satisfying. When you laugh, you're not just laughing at a joke, you're laughing with characters you genuinely care about. It's one of those films where the humor feels like a natural part of the journey, not a break in the action. The result? The audience feels like they're part of the crew. They're not watching the story unfold, they're living it. Tears, though, are where the film really hits home. There are moments that will have even the toughest of moviegoers reaching for the tissues. These aren't the melodramatic tear-jerkers you might expect from typical animated fare, but instead, the kind that hit you right where it counts. The heart. Think of Hiccup's growth, the emotional weight he carries as he steps into the shoes of a leader, the relationship with his father, the dragon's role in his life, and the personal sacrifices made for the greater good. It's this underlying theme of family and legacy that's explored so beautifully that you can't help but get choked up when you witness those quieter, emotional moments. It's not just a film about epic battles. It's about the emotional cost of leadership, the quiet victories of personal growth, and the bond between Hiccup and his dragon companions. The way the movie handles loss, love, and responsibility means you'll find yourself deeply invested in the outcomes, feeling both the joy and the sorrow in equal measure. And that's when the tears come. And then there's excitement. This film does action right, and it's not just about dragons swooping through the skies. Every aerial chase, every moment of danger, is packed with an intensity that keeps you on the edge of your seat. It's about the personal stakes of these characters. You're not just watching a dragon chase for the spectacle of it. You're holding your breath, hoping your favorite character makes it through the next round. When the action kicks in, you feel every swoop, every dive, every dramatic close call. It's the kind of excitement that gets your heart racing. And just when you think the tension's over, the movie throws you another curveball. The pacing, combined with that underlying emotional drive, keeps you fully engaged in the high-energy moments without losing the connection you have with the characters. Shock is another emotional punch that this film pulls off expertly. The film isn't afraid to go to some unexpected places, and it pulls the rug out from under you at just the right moments. There are twists, turns, and surprises that not only shock you but make you question what you thought you knew about the world and its characters. Whether it's a sudden change in allegiance or a heartbreaking realization about the future of dragons, these shocking moments aren't just there for the sake of it. They're pivotal to the character's growth and the story's evolution. The surprises are cleverly set up throughout the film, and when they hit, they resonate emotionally because they're tied to the journey the characters have been on. They don't just shock you, they make you feel. Then there's the power of discussion that this film invites. This isn't a movie you just walk out of and forget about the next day. It lingers. It makes you think about what it means to lead, what it means to be true to yourself, and what it means to be responsible for the world around you. The themes are layered enough that you'll find yourself discussing them with friends and family long after the credits roll. What did you think of Hiccup's choices? How did that unexpected twist make you feel? Did the film leave you thinking about dragons in a different way? It's the kind of movie that sparks deep conversations about identity, family, sacrifice, and the balance between progress and tradition. It gives you something to chew on, encouraging a kind of reflection that stays with you. And don't forget repeat viewings. Some films you watch once, maybe twice. But How to Train Your Dragon 2025 is a film that you'll want to revisit. Each rewatch uncovers more of the subtle storytelling, the deeper layers of character development, and the finer details in the world building. The movie has a way of rewarding those who come back to it with new insights and emotional payoffs that may have been missed the first time around. Whether it's catching a small interaction between characters, noticing a callback to an earlier scene, or simply absorbing the film's world in more depth, How to Train Your Dragon 2025 is rich with the kind of subtlety that makes rewatching it an enriching experience. Ultimately, this film is all about connection with the characters, with the world, and with the emotions it evokes. It's not just about entertainment, it's about creating a lasting bond with its audience. It makes you laugh, cry, and gasp, often in the same scene, and it does so in a way that feels completely natural. The emotional resonance of How to Train Your Dragon 2025 means it's not just a film you watch, it's an experience you feel, one that invites you back again and again. Comparisons to similar films. When you step into the world of How to Train Your Dragon 2025, you're not just entering a singular universe, You're stepping into a franchise that has already set a high bar for both animation and storytelling. So, how does this film stack up against its predecessors and similar films in the genre? Does it offer something fresh? Or does it rely on the familiar dragon-flying, hero's journey formula? Well, let's take a ride through the landscape of this franchise and beyond to see just how Star 2025 Star measures up. First, let's talk about the franchise itself. How to Train Your Dragon has always been one of those rare series that manages to blend epic adventure with deep emotional beats. The first movie was groundbreaking in terms of both visuals and heart, introducing us to a world where dragons weren't just fierce beasts, but companions with personalities. The sequels continued to develop these ideas, with Hiccup and his companions growing into more complex versions of themselves. So where does Star 2025 Star fall in the dragon family? In many ways, How to Train Your Dragon 2025 feels like the natural progression of the franchise. It doesn't just repeat the same story or rehash familiar character arcs. Instead, it deepens the emotional stakes and expands on the world in a way that feels fresh and exciting, while still honoring the foundational elements we love. The film doesn't fall into the trap of simply giving us more of the same. It builds on the themes of leadership, friendship, and responsibility, themes that have been central since the first film. But it does so with more maturity and depth. The stakes are higher, the emotional moments are more complex, and the world of dragons is explored in ways we haven't seen before. The new characters and challenges feel like they belong, enhancing rather than repeating what's come before. So while it's familiar, it's far from formulaic. It shows the world has changed, and the characters have too. Now, if we zoom out and look at the broader genre of animated adventure films, How to Train Your Dragon 2025 holds its own. In a world of Pixar and Disney, where high-stakes adventure meets emotional storytelling, How to Train Your Dragon has always carved out its own niche. Compared to other major animated franchises like Toy Story or Frozen, this film brings a more grounded emotional journey. Where Toy Story 4 explored the idea of moving on and finding your place, and Frozen focused on sisterhood, How to Train Your Dragon 2025 focuses deeply on leadership and sacrifice, asking questions about what it means to be a hero, what it means to protect, and the fine line between change and tradition. It might not have the same catchy musical numbers as Frozen, but its emotional payoff feels just as impactful, if not more so, because it connects with themes of growing up, family, and the responsibility of legacy. When compared to other animated action-adventure films like The Lion King or The Jungle Book, How to Train Your Dragon 2025 stands out because it offers a personal connection to its world. The dragons are not just beasts to be tamed, they are companions, each with their own personalities, quirks, and roles to play. The emotional stakes are tied directly to Hiccup's relationships, both with the dragons and the people in his life. Whereas The Lion King has a more broad, sweeping narrative about destiny and the circle of life, this film feels much more intimate in its exploration of what it means to care for others, and what it means to take responsibility. It's less about the epic scope, and more about the personal growth that happens within the grand adventure. On the director's filmography front, if you're familiar with the work of Dean DeBois, you know he's no stranger to films that explore the emotional complexity of relationships. Whether it's the emotional tug-of-war between family and destiny in the original How to Train Your Dragon, or the father-son dynamic explored in Lilo and Stitch, DeBois has a way of weaving emotional depth into his animated worlds. In Star 2025 Star, he does exactly what he's always done best. He takes characters that could easily be clichés or archetypes and transforms them into nuanced, relatable beings. This film is no exception. DeBois brings his signature mix of heart and adventure, blending them in ways that challenge the audience to care deeply about the stakes, while still making sure the thrills come through loud and clear. It's that perfect mix of fun and feels that has always been a hallmark of his style. Now let's talk about freshness. The question of whether How to Train Your Dragon 2025 offers anything new is a valid one, especially when you look at how successful the previous films have been. But Star 2025 Star is a film that confidently steps forward, offering new worlds, new dragons, and new challenges. It doesn't merely add more dragons to the mix. It explores new facets of dragon-human relationships, deepening what was already established in previous films. The introduction of new characters and dragons creates fresh dynamics, keeping the world feeling vibrant and ever-expanding. Even the challenges faced by the characters feel like new territory, especially when it comes to the emotional weight of leadership and legacy. The CGI and visual style also deserve a mention. The first film set a new standard for animated flying sequences, and Star 2025 Star builds on that. The flying scenes are as breathtaking as ever, but the technology has evolved, making the dragons feel even more lifelike, the environments more immersive, and the action sequences more thrilling. Compared to similar films in the genre, How to Train Your Dragon 2025 stands out for its ability to make you feel the flight. You're not just watching a dragon soar, you're with it, flying alongside the characters. It's a visceral experience that few other films in this genre manage to pull off with the same level of success. In comparison to other sequel-heavy franchises, How to Train Your Dragon 2025 is an example of how to build a story arc that feels earned and not exhausted. While other series often fizzle out by their third or fourth installment, this film shows that the franchise has more to say and more ground to cover. It's not content to simply coast on past success. It pushes forward, deepening the stakes and the relationships between the characters, while staying true to what made the first film so special. Ultimately, How to Train Your Dragon 2025 may follow a familiar formula in terms of themes: dragons, hero's journey, personal growth. But it does so in a way that's fresh, exciting, and emotionally resonant. Whether it's by expanding on the relationships we've come to love, exploring new dragons and challenges, or tapping into deeper emotional beats, it's a film that stands strong not only within its own franchise, but within the wider world of animated films. It's a worthy addition to the series, and a film that stands confidently on its own, offering something special to both longtime fans and newcomers alike. Symbolism and metaphors. If you think How to Train Your Dragon 2025 is just about dragons, epic flights, and Hiccup's hero journey, think again. This film is packed with layers of meaning, hidden visual cues, and recurring motifs that elevate the entire experience. So, let's dive into the rich tapestry of symbols and metaphors that Star 2025 Star weaves, and see how they enhance both the film's storytelling and its deeper themes. First off, the dragons themselves are the most obvious, but also the most complex, symbol in the film. While they've always been a metaphor for freedom, understanding, and coexistence, in this installment, the dragons take on new significance. As Hiccup has grown, so too have his dragons. They're no longer just his companions, they're representations of the bond between nature and civilization, the delicate dance between progress and preservation. The dragons act as metaphors for the untamable aspects of life that need to be nurtured rather than controlled. Each dragon in the film has a distinct personality, and through their interactions with the humans, the film shows us that these mythical creatures are more like mirrors of the characters themselves. They're not just animals, they embody the different sides of Hiccup and his people's journey. One of the most powerful recurring motifs is the sky. From the very first film, the sky has been a symbol of freedom, possibility, and the unknown. But in Star 2025 Star, it's also a metaphor for leadership. The sky represents the vast, open space Hiccup has to navigate as he steps into a more responsible role. It's a place of both danger and opportunity. The open skies, with their endless horizons, symbolize the expansive future that awaits, but also the weight of the responsibility that Hiccup and his tribe must face as they move forward. The dragon flights, the soaring through the clouds, are a physical representation of the heights Hiccup is reaching for, but they also reflect the internal struggle of balancing his dreams with the demands of leadership. Another potent symbol comes in the form of the maps. Maps have always been a central part of Hiccup's journey, his desire to chart new territories, discover uncharted lands, and push the limits of what's possible. In Star 2025 Star, maps symbolize both discovery and uncertainty. As Hiccup begins to realize the impact his leadership has on the world, the maps reflect not just geographical territories, but the emotional and psychological territories he's exploring. The blank spaces on the map become metaphors for the unknowns he must confront, both in the world outside and within himself. It's a beautiful way to illustrate that while progress is being made, there's still much to discover, much to understand, and much to learn. Speaking of the uncertainty theme, the recurring imagery of shadows plays an important role. In several key scenes, shadows are cast over characters, particularly Hiccup, signifying the weight of decisions and the moral ambiguity he faces as a leader. The shadows don't represent evil or danger per se, but rather the internal conflicts that cloud judgment and complicate leadership. These moments highlight the tension between the light of doing what's right and the darkness of what's difficult or necessary. Hiccup's own journey is not just a quest to become a hero, but to navigate these shades of gray that make leadership so hard. The shadows are symbolic of those very complexities that every leader must grapple with, and they remind us that not every choice is clear-cut. The growing divide between the dragons and humans, seen in some of the film's more intense moments, symbolizes the delicate balance between progress and tradition. The dragons represent a connection to a natural primal world, while humans embody progress and civilization. Throughout the film, this dynamic plays out visually, with dragons often shown in more wild, untamed environments, while humans live in more structured, built-up spaces. This contrast speaks to the underlying tension between embracing the past and moving forward into the future. There's a quiet but persistent reminder here that no matter how much we evolve, we must remain connected to our origins and the natural world around us, the very world we often seek to control or change. The storms in the movie also hold symbolic weight. Much like the turbulent emotions of the characters, storms appear as external manifestations of inner conflict. Hiccup faces not just literal storms in the sky, but also metaphorical storms within his leadership and his self-perception. Storms often signify change, upheaval, and transformation, and throughout the film, we see how Hiccup's leadership is tested by forces beyond his control. But just as storms eventually pass, so too does Hiccup find a way to navigate through the chaos, emerging stronger and more resolute. The visual cues of lightning, rain, and the thunderous skies offer a dramatic backdrop for his inner turmoil, adding an extra layer of depth to his journey. Then, there's the imagery of fire, something we've seen consistently with dragons in the franchise. Fire is usually associated with destruction, chaos, and unpredictability. However, in Star 2025 Star, it also represents renewal and creation. It's a dual-edged sword. It can burn everything down, but it can also forge something new, much like Hiccup's path as a leader. Fire becomes a metaphor for the difficult choices he faces, the power to either destroy or transform. The dragon's fire isn't just something to be feared. It's also a symbol of their strength and resilience. In this light, fire represents not just chaos, but the potential to create a new world, if you're willing to harness it wisely. Finally, one of the most subtle yet powerful metaphors is the bond between Hiccup and Toothless. Their relationship, the way it evolves throughout the film, is the heart of the story. It's the ultimate metaphor for the balance between human ingenuity and the untamed forces of nature. In many ways, Hiccup and Toothless are two halves of the same whole. Hiccup represents intellect and innovation, while Toothless embodies instinct and raw power. Their bond shows us that true strength comes not from dominance, but from mutual respect and understanding. This partnership is a constant reminder that cooperation, whether with nature, with others, or with ourselves, is key to overcoming the challenges we face. Each of these symbols and metaphors is intricately woven into the fabric of the film, enhancing its core themes of growth, responsibility, sacrifice, and balance. They don't just add depth to the visuals, they enrich the storytelling, allowing us to engage with the film on a much deeper level. So, next time you watch How to Train Your Dragon 2025, take a moment to look for these subtle cues. They're the film's way of speaking to us, nudging us to think beyond the surface and explore the greater meanings beneath the dragons and their wild, breathtaking world. Franchise or historical context. Let's talk about How to Train Your Dragon 2025, not just as a standalone movie, but as a proud fiery chapter in the larger How to Train Your Dragon saga. Because does it carry weight? This is a franchise that has flown with audiences for over a decade, and by 2025, we're no longer just watching Hiccup's youthful adventures. We're stepping into the legacy of a world that has evolved right alongside us. From the very first film, we were introduced to a Viking world where humans and dragons were mortal enemies. The magic began when Hiccup, a scrawny, underestimated teen, decided to defy his tribe's expectations and forge a bond with Toothless, a night fury dragon no one believed could be tamed. That simple act of friendship sparked an entire franchise built on themes of unity, trust, and breaking old cycles. Now Star 2025 Star doesn't just continue that story. It deepens it, complicates it, and challenges everything we thought we knew. In the broader franchise context, this film becomes a reflection on legacy. Earlier entries were about youthful rebellion and discovering who you are. But Star 2025 Star steps into the realm of what happens after you grow up. Hiccup is no longer just the scrappy outsider proving himself. He's a seasoned leader, burdened with the responsibility of his tribe's survival and the dragon's future. This movie forces the audience to look back on everything that's come before. Every dragon rescued, every villain faced, every sacrifice made, and ask, was it enough? Where does it all lead? That's what makes this chapter feel so mature and resonant. For fans who followed the franchise from the start, Star 2025 Star is full of echoes and callbacks. Not in a lazy "hey, remember this?" way, but in a thoughtful, emotionally loaded way. We see the scars of old battles, the shifting dynamics between dragons and humans, and the weight of past choices bearing down on Hiccup and his people. The film isn't content to just replay greatest hits. It's more interested in reckoning with history. What happens when the dream of peaceful coexistence starts to crack? What happens when the young idealist has to become the cautious guardian? There's also something incredibly satisfying in how Star 2025 Star handles the larger mythology of the dragons. Over the course of the series, we've learned about different species, rare breeds, hidden worlds, and long-forgotten legends. This film leans hard into expanding that lore, giving us glimpses into ancient dragon history, long-buried secrets, and the mysterious forces that have shaped the world Hiccup inhabits. For longtime fans, it's a treasure trove of world building. For newcomers, it's an invitation to dive deeper. It makes you want to go back and rewatch the earlier films with fresh eyes, hunting for the little clues and hints you missed the first time. What's really fascinating is how Star 2025 Star positions itself within the animated film landscape. The original How to Train Your Dragon films helped push the boundaries of what animated storytelling could do, blending stunning visuals with emotional, character-driven plots. While many franchises tend to spin their wheels with sequels, this series has consistently evolved, daring to take bigger emotional risks. It's a testament to the creator's commitment that Star 2025 Star doesn't feel like just another cash grab. It feels like a culmination. It knows where it comes from, and it knows where it wants to go. If we look at it from a broader historical context, not just inside the franchise, but in terms of animated cinema overall, How to Train Your Dragon has always been a bit of a standout. Unlike many other animated franchises that lean heavily on slapstick humor or pop culture references, this series has always gone for heart first. It's a series that dares to deal with loss, grief, growth, and the painful process of letting go. Star 2025 Star keeps that tradition alive, showing how animated films can tell stories with just as much emotional weight and thematic depth as live-action epics. In fact, by the time we reach this chapter, the series feels less like a kid's movie and more like a full-blown fantasy saga with a rich, textured history. And let's not forget the way Star 2025 Star honors its past while looking to the future. This film doesn't exist in a vacuum. It carries the emotional baggage of everything that's come before, while also laying the groundwork for what's next. Will we see new heroes rise? Will the dragons find their place in a rapidly changing world? Will Hiccup's story come to a close? Or is this just another turning point in an even grander narrative? The beauty of this installment is that it doesn't offer all the answers. It invites us to keep dreaming, keep questioning, and keep flying right alongside these characters we've come to love. In short, How to Train Your Dragon 2025 isn't just another sequel. It's a pivotal chapter in a franchise that has always been about more than just dragon rides and battles. It's about heritage, evolution, and the ongoing tension between past and future. And for anyone who's been along for the ride since the beginning, this film feels like a soaring, bittersweet tribute to everything that's made this series so unforgettable. Alright, let's break open the treasure chest and peek inside the glittering, and sometimes risky, world of budget and box office, for How to Train Your Dragon 2025. This isn't just some small indie passion project scraped together with a shoestring budget and big dreams. No, this is DreamWorks pulling out the big guns. We're talking about a franchise that has consistently delivered not just in emotional storytelling, but also in jaw-dropping animation, sweeping music and epic-scale production. And all of that, it costs money. A lot of money. Reports around the industry pegged the budget somewhere north of $150 million. And honestly, once you watch the film, you can see every dollar on the screen. The animation, exquisite. The landscapes, massive, detailed, brimming with texture. The dragon designs, even more varied and intricate than before, with scales glinting, wings rippling, fire flaring. It's clear they spared no expense in making sure this was a visual knockout. And let's not forget the voice cast, top-tier talent returning alongside fresh faces, all of whom don't come cheap. Add to that the state-of-the-art CGI, new motion capture techniques, and an army of animators working tirelessly, and you've got a production where the budget isn't just big, it's necessary to hit the artistic heights the studio aimed for. But here's the fun part. Big budget doesn't guarantee big success. Remember, studios can pour mountains of cash into a project, only to watch it flop spectacularly if audiences don't show up. So, how did How to Train Your Dragon 2025 perform at the box office? Well, let's just say it roared rather than whimpered. Opening weekend numbers crushed expectations, pulling in massive crowds thanks to a powerful marketing campaign that played on nostalgia while teasing fresh thrills. Trailers were everywhere, movie theaters, YouTube, social media, showing off just enough epic dragon action to hook old fans and new viewers alike. Plus, DreamWorks wisely positioned this as a family event film, which meant tickets sold across multiple demographics. Parents who grew up on the originals, kids who fell in love with the series later, and fantasy lovers eager for another dragon-fueled adventure. International markets, as always, played a huge role too. This franchise has a strong global following, especially in Europe and Asia, where audiences connect deeply with the themes of loyalty, adventure, and the bond between humans and creatures. Box office tallies surged overseas, often outperforming domestic numbers, and kept the film in the top spots for weeks. Of course, it wasn't all smooth sailing. Critics noted that the crowded 2025 release schedule, packed with superhero movies, sci-fi blockbusters, and live-action remakes, meant fierce competition for box office dominance. But How to Train Your Dragon 2025 managed to hold its ground, thanks largely to strong word-of-mouth and glowing audience reviews. This wasn't a case of a movie burning bright and fizzling fast. It had legs, staying relevant for weeks as people came back for second, and sometimes third viewings. What's really interesting is how the marketing shaped its financial success. The team leaned heavily into emotional appeal. Trailers highlighting the bond between Hiccup and Toothless, the stakes for the dragon world, and the echoes of past adventures. They didn't just sell a movie, they sold a homecoming, a return to a beloved world. That emotional hook proved to be a box office supercharger, pulling in audiences who weren't just buying a ticket, they were signing up for an experience they'd been waiting years for. So when we line it all up, the massive budget, the stunning on-screen quality, the strong marketing push, the international appeal, and the audience love, it's clear How to Train Your Dragon 2025 wasn't just a financial risk. It was a calculated bet that paid off handsomely. It soared at the box office, proving that even in an era of endless content and fierce competition, there's still room for heartfelt, beautifully crafted stories about friendship, courage, and of course dragons. Would you like me to break down the estimated earnings or profit margins further? Alright, dragon lovers, let's talk about the most important question on everyone's mind. Where can you actually watch How to Train Your Dragon 2025? Because trust me, this isn't the kind of movie you want to catch halfway on a tiny screen while distracted. You want the full experience, the fire, the flight, the heart, all hitting you at maximum power. First, let's start with the obvious, theatrical release. When How to Train Your Dragon 2025 hit theaters, it was designed to be a big screen spectacle. We're talking IMAX-sized dragon battles, Dolby Atmos sound shaking your seat as Toothless soars overhead, and jaw-dropping animation details you'd miss on a smaller screen. Seeing it in theaters isn't just about watching a movie. It's about being immersed. The colors pop, the flying sequences make you grip your seat, and the emotional beats land harder when you're surrounded by an audience collectively gasping, laughing, or tearing up. So if you can, the best way to watch is definitely in a theater with the biggest screen and best sound system you can find. But maybe you missed the theatrical window. No worries, because the distribution team had a plan for that. After its box office run, the movie rolled out on major streaming platforms. We're talking global giants like Netflix, Disney Plus, or Peacock, depending on the final studio deal, where you can stream it from the comfort of your couch. Streaming brings its own charm. You can pause to grab snacks, rewatch your favorite dragon flight sequences, or slow down for that emotional farewell scene, just to let it sink in. Plus, you can watch it with family, friends, or even binge all the earlier movies in the franchise for a full How to Train Your Dragon marathon. For the collectors or diehard fans, there's also the digital rental and purchase route on platforms like Amazon Prime Video, Apple TV, Google Play, and Vudu. These let you own the film digitally in high definition or even 4K, ensuring you can revisit Berk and its dragons anytime, anywhere, even offline. And let's not forget the physical release. Blu-ray and 4K UHD discs packed with bonus features, behind-the-scenes footage, director's commentary, and deleted scenes. For fans who love seeing how the magic was made, these editions are pure gold. Now let's talk about how to get the fullest impact from watching. Whether you're in a theater or at home, this movie thrives on scale. So if you're watching at home, crank up that sound system, dim the lights, and go full screen. The score swells, the wind rushes, the dragons roar. You want to feel pulled in. Watching it casually on your phone during a commute? You'll miss half the magic. But setting up a proper viewing night, maybe even with a few friends who followed the series, transforms it into an event. Oh, and one last tip. If you're revisiting the film later, keep an eye out for any special extended editions or director's cuts that might release down the line. Studios often reward patient fans with extra footage or alternate scenes, adding even more depth to the story and characters. So whether you're soaring into theaters, streaming at home, or adding it to your digital library, there are plenty of ways to experience How to Train Your Dragon 2025. The important part? Don't rush it. This is a film that invites you to sit back, take it all in, and let yourself be swept away into a world of wonder, adventure, and of course dragons. Would you like me to recommend the best order to rewatch the whole series before you dive into this one?